Good morning from Cafés, Çanakkale, at the mouth of the Dardanelles. Another beautiful day aboard the Azamara Onward, and we are in port with the Sea Cloud, a cruise ship trimaster, all in one. Very impressive ship. Also registered in Valletta, as is our ship, Sea Cloud 2. Sail as in olden days. I think I like that kind of power more, but that may be an experience for another time. So we're in Cafés, and about to hit the land. We've got to go out of this port and onto a shuttle bus to take us up to Çanakkale. Çanakkale itself, I think, is just a lovely port town. The attractions that we might have been able to see if we had made an excursion or made great plans, we would probably have to go quite a ways to see. So the Assos and the ancient city, or what's left of Troy, are among those. I want to show you something just in the distance. Just in the distance, passing us out of the mouth of the Dardanelles, we were with Norwegian Jade yesterday in Istanbul. When we were on the Jade, we managed to stay 2 nights in Istanbul, which I thought was terrific. Evidently, her passengers at the moment do not have that luxury. They had a day in the city of 20 million people. Really, 2 days isn't enough, but 1 day for most people, particularly those not familiar with Istanbul, I would say is really not enough. So I was sent pictures of her pulling out at 10:30 or 11 o'clock by my friend who lives just up from the Galata port. And I was very surprised to see that, because it looked like she wasn't at the pier any longer. And I sent him a question. I says, "What, they're leaving too?" And he says, "Yeah, they're gone." So there she is, on her way, probably to Kuşadası, ahead of us. That, I believe, was our itinerary last time. So they're on their way down there, or perhaps somewhere else. I don't know, but. We're very happily again on the Azamara Onward, and we're about to get off the ship and ride a bus up to Çanakkale, so I will say more when we're there. Usually at a cruise ship port, you have 2 very large ships. We have 2 very small ships in relative terms. The Sea Cloud and the Onward from ground level. With the tugboat for scale. Greetings from the port of Çanakkale in Turkey. We're very close to the memorial to those who fought and died in the First World War at Gallipoli, the Anzac troops and the Turkish under the Ottoman Empire, and it was just a slaughter. It's a piece of history that's not often taught, and it's an area of the world that's not known to many, even those who are interested in the history of the First World War, as most of what happened in the First World War occurred in the battlefields of northeastern France and Belgium and a little bit of the Netherlands. There was a lot of fighting on the Eastern Front and on this southeastern front as well. So it's an interesting place to be. It's not the kind of place I think I probably would have come on my own. So we're going to do a little wandering around Çanakkale port. It's a very warm day today. It's the 2nd of August. I think the forecast high is close to 40 degrees centigrade, up into the 90s for Fahrenheit. Really a nice waterfront in Çanakkale. And you'll forgive me, I have probably pronounced this a half a dozen different ways already. And Turkish is not my first language. And so far it isn't even my last language. So perhaps someday I'll improve upon that. Milao ligo elenika. So I've got a little Greek. But almost no Turkish beyond hello. Little boy wanted to give a wave. As this ferry boat pulls out, probably one of the car ferries up to Istanbul, there seem to be a number of ferries here from Çanakkale that are headed that direction. Across the Dardanelles is one of the memorials to the soldiers, the Turkish soldiers of Gallipoli, and I took a picture of it on a previous trip through the Dardanelles, and it's quite dramatic because it was taken at night. I happened to be sitting in my stateroom doing some work, and the ship was cruising through the Dardanelles, and I was happy to have data from either my cell phone or wireless router, and all of a sudden I see this light outside, and I went outside on the balcony, and there it was. So I quickly snapped some photos. I said, wow, I'll never see that again. And we actually are in a port where we can view it, and I'm not sure it's viewable directly from here, but the large Turkish flag, I don't know if we can get on it here. I can see it with my naked eye, but I don't know if the zoom in there helped. There's a large Turkish flag on the opposite hill. Coming in here on the shuttle bus from the port of Kefes, we were able to see it, but it may be a little bit down the Dardanelles. And as we're almost at the Aegean Sea, we have the clear waters that the Aegean and the Mediterranean are so well known for, even here in a port with so many little boats and big ferry boats as sources of pollution. There's quite a nice seaside here in Çanakkale. Opposite the marina, on that seaside, on that hill where all those apartment buildings are, is the date 18th of March 1915 and a large Turkish flag, another memorial to the soldiers who fought and died at Gallipoli. As I think I mentioned earlier, the historic sites of Troy, the Trojan horse, and a little farther to the south, Assos, are able to be visited by those with a little bit more time than we have. It would be a shame to pop down there on a just for an hour, having never been there before. So the importance of those two historical sites make this area probably a place, if you have the option, to spend maybe a day or two, stay here and either rent a car or get a professional guide to interpret those sites, or at least get you to those sites. There's not as much there as is in Ephesus, Efes in Turkish, which is near the port of Kuşadası, and Selçuk is the other city near there with some interesting archaeological ruins and some Byzantine era, early Ottoman era fortresses and castles in Selçuk. We are planning on going to, on that day where we land in 2 days in Ephesus or Kuşadası, we're planning on actually grabbing a ferry over to Samos Island in Greece. However, if for some reason we missed the last ferry to Samos for whatever reason, we would go over to Selçuk, because I've been to Ephesus so many times. I suppose if all else fails, we could always do a tour of Ephesus. It's fascinating. I've been there many times. I have said jokingly that I could probably qualify as a tour guide. I don't know that I'm quite that sharp on it, but I know it very, very well. So here we have a replica, probably one of many in this area, of the Trojan horse, one way into the fortress. It's a metaphor both in history and really in the contemporary period, a very popular reference. And we are in the immediate vicinity of where it supposedly took place, because it was thousands of years ago. I think he's got bottles of water. If any Turkish viewers want to translate anything that they hear in any of these, please put them in the comments. The walk around this harbor continues, and we are, as we have been, at a small craft marina. A lot of little fishing boats and little pleasure craft as well, and some larger pleasure craft, and evidently a boat for either some of the coastal police or the Coast Guard over there, and some small to medium-sized tour boats as well. So evidently there are little tour boats you can hire for little port tours, and probably going past the memorials to Gallipoli. Now, I have found the Dor Yolcu, and I bet I've butchered that pronunciation as well, but I've just seen the memorial to the soldiers of Gallipoli that I saw while on a ship traversing the Dardanelles, and I've zoomed in as far as I can get across this marina. I can see it very clearly myself, but I wonder whether it's going to come out that way. I hope so. And again, I'm going to try to put a picture of this either at the very end of this video, or maybe I can seg it in right now. We'll see. But that's a powerful part of Turkish history. The Turks, as I've mentioned in the past, were a member of the Central Powers in the First World War, which was Germany, the German Empire, Austria, Hungary, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire, pretty much against the whole rest of the world. And in the First World War, unlike in the Second World War, the Italians were part of the Allied forces, as were the Japanese, as were clearly the English, the French, those countries invaded by the Germans, Belgium, Holland. At that time there was no Poland. Russia, Tsarist Russia, was part of the Allies, and of course the United States and the remainder of the British Empire, to include Australia and New Zealand. And the Australians and the New Zealand forces, unfortunately, were the ones with the highest casualties on the Allied side in the Gallipoli conflict. And if you've seen the movies, particularly the one called Gallipoli, regarding that conflict and the stories and struggles, if you're a First World War historian or just interested in history of that period, it's rather moving. And again, it's getting to be very forgotten, and it's really a shame. But getting back to why that's so important to the Turks, like the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians, who lost the First World War, these empires all crumbled. The German Empire devolved into the Weimar Republic. Austro-Hungarian Empire devolved into smaller countries of Austria and Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire finally came to an end right at about 3 years after the end of the First World War, and then the Turks had an internal revolution that resulted in the Turkish Republic under Kemal Ataturk, still regarded as a great hero of the people 100 years later. And we've walked up to Taksim Square in a video, sadly without audio, which I have yet to process. And hopefully, if you've seen my video walking up and down the stairs and the streets of Old Town Istanbul from the Galata Port Cruise Terminal, there's a pretty good little bit of coverage of the Ataturk Memorial up in Taksim Square. But Turks in this recent election regarded Ataturk as the example that they wanted from leadership, and I'm not sure that they got it this time. Here at the port there is a large model of the fortress of Troy, and then these signs that interpret it and tell you how to get there. And this says here, and it's faded by the sun, so I'm not sure it's going to come out, the Troy ruins are 30 kilometers from the city center. Leaving from the city center to the Izmir Road, Smyrna, 30 kilometers past, there is a Troy plaque. When you follow that plaque about 5 kilometers, you'll reach the location of the ruins. There are also buses in the city center from Köprübaşı to Troy ruins. This center is made for the guests that come to the city to present the Troy ruins location by Çanakkale municipality. In this arrangement, both summaries on the workings of Troy and the possibilities of transportation to the ruins are explained. The space arrangement is inspired from the Megaron plan of the first house structure that belongs to the Troy I culture period. The structure is shaped with small entrance followed by long rectangular room. Wooden supported sun-dried wall stands above where stone foundation which is darned like a saw edge. Now you are at the gate of a Megaron, and we'll show you this. You will see the 6th cultural period maquette in the room of the Megaron. So I assume that that is what they mean there with the saw edge. This little stone enclosure here. And then we have this rather detailed model of the fortress and the, I suppose, the residential area of Troy, which resembles a lot what you still see today in terms of construction and outlying areas. So many thousands of years have not changed the practices of construction in this region, and also in areas such as in the Greece mainland and the Greek mainland and the Greek Isles. And then here we have Troy is one of the first known settlements in Anatolia. Anatolia is the Eastern Empire, or the Eastern District. Anatolia is, effectively east in Greek, ancient, and modern. The town is located in an area of 90 meters diameter radius and fully fortified. All the pottery was shaped by hand. And then a progressive history from about 3,500 BC. And some of the interpretation of all of the history, including that in Homer's Iliad. The city is now at least 10 times bigger than the first Troy settlement at the time of the Iliad. And the city was destroyed in an earthquake in 1300 BC. Rebuilt by the Hellenes, the Greeks, as the city of Ilion, the city of the sun. Troy was captured by Romans about the time of Christ. Fell into decline until about 1300 to 1400 AD. Sand and mud covering the most ancient ruins. So the archaeological digs found the earliest evidence of Troy below the Byzantine era Troy, following the rise of the Ottoman Empire, during which time it was pretty much just ruins and wasteland. So what we find out here is that Troy was still an active town or city during pretty much all of the Byzantine period. And that was something I did not know. I thought it was generally gone following the Roman period. But evidently it was still more or less in existence. So this becomes somewhat more interesting, not being a student so much of ancient history other than in passing. So we ran into a plaque regarding the replica Trojan horse in Çanakkale. And evidently this was the one used in the Brad Pitt movie and has been on display here since 2004. So it's a movie prop. If you watch the movie Troy, I haven't, maybe I need to watch it. You may recognize this. And it is on display in Çanakkale. Another possibly good shot of the Doğru Yolcu, I believe it's Guardman Halt is the translation of that. I've looked it up before, but there was a large ferry boat in the way of that earlier, which is why I didn't see it until I was farther down. But again, I've got pictures of this from before, going by it on the water, and again, really dramatic, all lit up in the nighttime. We're still at the marina here in Çanakkale. Be a nice place to come and just do a little bit more exploration. I think I can recommend it as a venue. I was a little bit doubtful, but it's a lovely little port city, and it seems to be very popular for tourism, not just among the Turkish population, who have very ready access to it via the ferry system from Istanbul. We're coming back into the main avenue from town. cars boarding the ferry to Istanbul or otherwise. Tomorrow we hope to take a ferry from Chesme to Chios Island in Greece. And we're going to do some driving around, I hope, on Chios. And we'll have a good time. But for now, we're here in Çanakkale on a beautiful summer's day. A very historic part of Turkey, right at the mouth of the Dardanelles as it feeds into the Aegean and further into the Mediterranean Sea. Just as we were getting back on the bus, we noticed this piece of artillery from Gallipoli. Another memorial here on the street to all those who'd perished 108 years ago, last March. Well, thanks for watching Travel with Chip. Please subscribe and share. Appreciate all your support. And keep checking back as we've got more and more stuff. I don't know when I'm going to get around to processing all of this, but we'd have plenty of internet. And again, I think I would recommend a visit to Çanakkale, particularly if you have the opportunity to get here as part of a cruise with Azamara or some other line. Thanks again.